And on the international front, a record 46 million people are expected to cast their votes in the historic referendum to decide whether Britain remains or exits the European Union. Now, polling stations opened at 7 o'clock BST and will close at 2200 British Standard Time. It is only the third nationwide referendum in UK history and comes after a 4-month battle for votes between the Leave and Remain campaigns. Whichever side gets more than half of the votes cast is considered to have won. Now, after the polls close, sealed ballot boxes will be collected and transported to the hundreds of counting venues. These represent all 380 local government areas in England, Scotland and Wales, plus one each for Northern Ireland and Gibraltar. Now, joining me from London with an update on today's referendum is Jack Barton. Jack, of course, welcome to the show. Now, of course, financial markets are on the edges of their seats today ahead of Friday's release of the final results. What was voter turnout like today? Of course, with torrential rains in some places.
That's right, and it does appear that the financial markets have perhaps eased back into those seats a little bit. We've seen the FTSE 100 here in Britain shooting up today, and that's really been the reaction right across the European continent. We've seen markets in the green right across the EU, with the expectation there that Britain will remain. Of course, we don't know if that's the case yet, but the markets have really made no secret of the fact that they would like Britain to remain, given the interconnectivity between Britain's financial sector, which is really the foundation of the economy here, and the rest of the bloc. Now, as you mentioned before, a record number of people eligible to vote here, but we're going to have to wait for the polls to close to find out just how many of them turned out. But voting did appear to go smoothly today. There were torrential downpours over the past 24 hours here in London, and particularly down across the southeast. Many polling stations were closed, some of them flooded waist deep. But officials there moved people onto other polling stations, and appear all has gone smoothly so far.
Well, Jack, we've talked a lot about the consequences of a Brexit, but what are the ramifications if, the UK decides to remain?
If Britain decides to remain, initially, particularly amongst the business community here, amongst the markets and across Europe, there'll be a huge sigh of relief and a very temporary return to normal. But then there'll be, of course, gauging what is normal. There's still a lot of problems with the economy here. There's a lot of problems with the economy across the European Union, particularly in the Eurozone, and discontent about that is not really going to go away. There's going to be enormous pressure on Britain's Prime Minister, David Cameron, to continue the reform process, and Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission, has already said that there will be no more grounds for reforms. They're not going to give any more concessions than the ones they've already given. But Britain has really started something here. I mean, people talk about the discontent, but there's actually more discontent against the EU and many other countries, including France, and also in Spain, which has elections on Sunday, France and Germany with elections next year. So there's going to be a lot of political ramifications of what's happened here, and it'll be playing out across Europe over the year ahead.
Now, Jack, as we anticipate tomorrow's voter results, it seems like a number of polls this morning showed the Remain group were in the lead. What's your take? What are the polls saying right now?
That's right. We saw over the past week, there was a period there where the Exit camp was in the lead, but then the Remain camp crept ahead by 1 point. And we saw on the eve that they made even more gains. And the expectation, again, we talked about the markets, but we've seen the pound sterling rising. The expectation really is that Britain will remain at the moment. Now, having said that, in these polls, we've seen 10 to 15% of people saying they're undecided. And I've spoken to many of them. They say they do take the issue seriously. They are going to cast a ballot, but they're really going to make their mind up at the last moment. And if even a third of them decide to turn out and swing in one direction, that really could shift everything. So even while the mood here is certainly in the Remain camp, it's not a guarantee that that is going to be the end result.
Well, I guess it's a wait and see situation. Thank you so much, Jack. Jack Barton joining us in London.